Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the Football Friday podcast. Matt Catrillo, Alex Kazora, Tyler DiGiacomo here with you this week. No Ian Hunter. Hopefully we'll get him back next week for the start of the regular season, which, guys, is 1 week away. Patriots, Chiefs. I'm very, very excited for that. I can't wait. Regular season football, almost here. What's going on?
We got a lot to talk about today, Boy Wonder.
Yes, we do. Very much so. And the breaking news, as you saw, it just came right through. We'll get to that in just 1 second. The Steelers. D Jock, what's going on?
Not much. Just want to tell the viewers we spent 20 minutes talking fantasy football before we started this. That's a little.
And we were even debating that maybe we should make this like an open GM show, do like our own fantasy football 24-hour show that ESPN does with Matthew Berry and Adam Schefter. I think that is more entertaining than this.
Well, maybe because we're all going to yell at each other. But but Alex is right. A lot of Steelers and Eagles news going on this week, so we got a lot to talk about, a lot of interest from all parties here. So
definitely. So let's jump right to it, to the latest breaking news right now, starting with the Steelers as they win the Joe Hayden sweepstakes, I guess we can so call it. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. They signed him to a 3-year, $27 million deal. Just a few hours after he was released by the Browns, he gets $7 million this year, sources told Adam Schefter. And the most interesting part of this thing was, I think, Schefter also said later that Hayden had bigger offers from other teams. The Saints were involved, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Eagles, and a few other teams were involved in this, and he turned them all down because he wanted to be in Pittsburgh, which I guess I can kind of see, having played Pittsburgh for that many years in Cleveland and wanted to be a part of their organization that wins instead of being with the Browns, who obviously have struggled throughout his entire tenure. But I look at this, first of all, from a money standpoint for the Steelers here, is you've had this Le'Veon Bell situation hanging over your head the entire offseason, and you signed this type of contract for a guy that's obviously had his issues and downfall. But I don't know, from a football standpoint, rather, we all know how much Ross Cockrell has struggled this preseason. So I think the Steelers were a little desperate to try and fix that, trying to be in that win-now mode. And D Jock, I know we kind of talked about that a little last week. So, Alex, let me start with you first. I know you weren't a big fan of this deal to begin with, so I'll go with you with your initial reaction, money, football standpoint, everything.
Well, let me ask something that you said, Catrillo. You were talking about Le'Veon Bell and money. I didn't understand your point. What's the connection?
Well, basically, I just don't know how the Steelers can afford this contract, basically, when you have the Bell contract hanging over your head, and you know you're going to have to pay him eventually.
Well, that's eventually. The Steelers have had a lot of cap space. I don't know exactly what the number is. They've made the moves. They've added Vance McDonald and, Joe Hayden. Now, on the surface, it's a 3-year, $27 million deal, but what are the particulars? What are the details?
Right, we don't know that yet, exactly.
I think he's getting $7 million this year.
Right, that's the only thing that we really know of right now.
Yeah, I'm guessing the team can get out under this contract after the season if they need to. So it's kind of basically a year-to-year type thing is my guess, usually how this stuff goes, how the Steelers like to operate in time of contracts, especially for this veteran guy. So I don't think the money, it's a lot. It's maybe more than what I thought he was going to get. But when you have a lot of interest and you have a market that increases his value, you're going to get paid more. Now, from a player standpoint, that's what I care about the most. I thought Hayden had really struggled, and I've long thought that Hayden was kind of one of the more overrated cornerbacks in the NFL. And I strongly believe, and I think many guys that follow the league closer than I do have said that Hayden has more name value than actual talent right now. He has regressed really significantly in the last couple of years. Part of that's been injury-related, but, then that brings up the question about injuries and can you stay healthy, and the past hernia or groin surgeries or whatever he's had in the past, how much is that going to hamper him in the future? So if the Steelers were in the old school Dick LeBeau cover 3 system that they were in, or if they were planning on playing as much cover 2 this year as they did last year, which I don't really believe that they will, I think I would like this idea more. But I think it's a bit of a weird fit whenever you're a team that's going to play more man-to-man coverage, and that's been the talking point, press man, and you're bringing a corner that I don't think really fits that nearly as well as it used to. So definitely, I get why they did it, and I give them credit for addressing a need and understanding that they need to make an upgrade. They weren't happy with Cockrell. They weren't happy with Jesse James at tight end. They come in back-to-back days, and they address that. You have to give them credit for that. But I think, again, the perception of Joe Hayden is much better than the reality of Joe Hayden, who I think is on the downside of his career.
Yeah, let me go back to the money for a second. If that is the case, and again, we're judging this based on the only thing that we know of. It's a 3-year, $27 million deal, including $7 million this year. If they have those options in there, those team options, Alex, then I would agree this is a better deal. Though I would think though it's still a little bit more money than I think would be ideal for them for a player of his caliber at this point of his career. And from a football standpoint, I agree those are all fair points. If I'm looking at this from an Eagles standpoint, and I would have, for the right money, for the right price, I would have taken a chance on him because the Eagles' cornerback situation is much worse than where the Steelers are at some point. But as you mentioned, it was still a need for Pittsburgh because of Cockrell's struggles, and they're in a much better spot than the Eagles are right now as far as being a championship contender. So the Steelers made a move, and they wanted to take a risk and thought they would be in the best interest to do it that way. But hopefully, if they are in there, I mean, the Steelers aren't stupid in that regard with money and knowing who they have to bring back or whatever. So I think Steeler fans are going to have to trust. I think I'll have to put more trust into the front office and Kevin Colbert than more often than not, I think.
Yeah, I don't think the money's going to be much of an issue here at all. I don't think there's team options, but it's just a thing where it's base salary, and you can get out of this deal without much dead money in year 2 and definitely year 3. So they can make it work. Again, they had a ton of cap space. The bigger than it was, but it was over $10 million in cap space coming into this weekend. And if you cut some guys, Ross Cockrell could get cut. That's going to save nearly, probably $1.5 million after displacement. So money, it's surprising, but that's not the focal point. Not why I'm concerned about this free agent signing.
D Jock, let me bring you in now, and 2 questions for you. 1, do you like the deal for Pittsburgh football and money standpoint? And 2, if you're the Eagles, how heavily were you pursuing him?
Well, the Eagles think it's kind of interesting. I mean, they did cut Ron Brooks, and they cut 2 cornerbacks this week. So maybe they were kind of definitely going after Hayden a lot.
That was my thought, especially after the Ron Brooks cutting.
True, yeah. So maybe the Eagles are not kind of screwed. Maybe that's why they were hoping it's free up some space and cap room. That's interesting there. Steelers was, as Alex said, it's on the surface a 3-year, $27 million deal, so $9 million a year. He's not at all worth $9 million a year. I mean, I see some reports it could be like a base of 7 plus like some incentives or some other guarantees. So that's gonna be interesting there. But he is 28, kind of on the older side. Did miss 14 games the last 2 years or so. But he was someone that came out in the 2010 draft, very, very, highly rated. Kind of had that comparison to a Leon Hall, type who played for the Bengals. Such. So, I mean, I think it's a good deal. As Alex said, it shows up a position that they need. But overall, the Steelers, got the cornerback, got a tight end. They're looking pretty good so far this week. Filling a lot of holes.
So, as far as going forward here now, Alex, I'll go back to you with Ross Cockrell. Obviously, he's going to lose his starting job here to Joe Hayden. 1, do you think he plays Thursday? Joe Hayden, plays Thursday in Carolina, or do you think they rest him for the regular season just to get him a few reps? They play him a series or 2, maybe if that, or do they sit him and then they just throw him out there week 1? And what happens now with Ross Cockrell?
No, Hayden won't play against Carolina. I mean, the game's tomorrow. You're just going to get him ready for week 1. I think Cockrell's in severe danger of being cut right now. Remember, they still have to make. I think they have to make a roster. No,
it's Saturday at 4, I believe, isn't it?
Well, I was thinking if they had to make a roster move to get Hayden onto the roster, but they have a spot open, so they don't. But yeah, you have roster cut downs, right after this preseason finale. But yeah, I don't know what Cockrell's fit is right now because you're not going to cut Sensabaugh. You liked him, you just brought him in. He's more versatile, better special teamer. I don't think you're going to cut William Gay because he does have some versatility. I can see where he would work on special teams. You want to still kind of keep somebody from that group. You don't want to totally, overhaul the group in one offseason. And Gay is considered the leader and kind of the steady presence on that team. So I think you want to keep William Gay. You're obviously going to keep Cam Sutton. I think Mike Hilton has done enough to make the team. So yeah, long story short, I think Cockrell's in severe danger of being cut. Or they can try to work out a deal and dish him for like a 7th-round pick maybe. We'll have to see what they can do with that. But, Hayden won't play, and Cockrell's in some big, big trouble.
Either wouldn't be surprising to me, so we'll have to keep an eye on that for sure going forward here. But a big splash for the Steelers, no doubt, getting Hayden in. And just to touch on the Vance McDonald deal real quick before we move on to the Eagles, they get him and a 2018 fifth rounder from San Francisco for a 2018 fourth rounder. And obviously, Alex, a very good move considering the tight ends have been underperforming this preseason.
Yeah, that was a really good move. I definitely like that one more of the two. McDonald's is a guy that's a run-after-catch threat that's probably about as good a blocker as Jesse James is right now. He's versatile. He's got the length and size to be an asset as a blocker. He hasn't done much in pass pro, but I think he has the physical tools to succeed there. The tight end group was super underwhelming this year. It was probably the worst group. There was no one to push him. At least at corner, you had a bunch of guys that were competing for spots. The tight end group was pretty settled, so I think it was smart to add somebody, and they gave up pretty much next to nothing to get him. So I think it was, again, knowing a need, addressing a need, and doing it quickly and getting a good player into Pittsburgh.
And my guess would be, if as long as he proves himself, he could work his way up to getting significant playing time, if not becoming a starter and taking over for Jesse James.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen sooner rather than later. I mean, I think James still starts week 1 because McDonald's got to get up to speed. But James has struggled, and that's a clear message to him. That's why this deal went down. Grimble has struggled, but the message was for Jesse James. So I would guess that 2-3 weeks into this thing, Vance McDonald's going to be the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow, very, very interesting. A lot to keep an eye on there as we head into week 1 for Pittsburgh. So now we'll switch things to the Eagles, who made a lot of moves this past week, starting with Ron Brooks earlier today, as they cut him in a series of roster moves that were made as well. And I'll start with that first. And D Jock, I'll bring you in here with this too. I don't really understand the move. I get he was coming off the ruptured Achilles from last season against the Vikings. He had the hamstring injury that came up. He hasn't really played a whole lot this preseason. But, as I mentioned, we were alluding this to talking about the Hayden deal with Pittsburgh and how I thought the Eagles maybe could have taken a chance on him to try and bring him in here at the right price. Their quarterback situation is just so dire and thin right now, and you have a lot of inexperienced guys and unproven guys that I don't know exactly where the Eagles are thinking that they're going to actually go ahead and believe in Patrick Robinson and put a lot of faith in him. Now, I get he's better in the slot, and that's where he's going to be, and he's had, I guess, pretty good preseason for his caliber. But I just don't think you can go into the regular season having him there. But unless they make some crazy move within the next week or so, I think that's going to have to be the case. Maybe you see more Malcolm Jenkins in the slot. I don't know. Not ideal, and you have Corey Graham in there that could pitch in at safety if you move Jenkins to that point. And from a money standpoint, the Eagles are only saving $750,000 in salary cap. So it's not like they're really saving a whole ton of money. So you might as well just kept him because you're better from a football standpoint, and it's really not going to be that big of a difference from a cap standpoint. So I really just don't get this move at all because to me it kind of contradicts overall. You bring in Ronald Darby to try and upgrade this cornerback class, and then all of a sudden you cut a guy that's been one of your better corners, though he is obviously just in the slot. So I just don't get where the Eagles go at this point from cornerback, Tyler.
Yeah, kind of as I said in the opening thing about the Steelers and Hayden, maybe the Eagles were cutting him to make room for the Hayden thing. I don't know how feasible that was. I mean, and listen to, the Philly sports media and Twitter and stuff. People are kind of more perplexed by kind of, as you are. No one's really upset or kind of saying like a why thing. Not that they don't care, but it's kind of like just especially with the whole slew of moves the Eagles made, with Dornbos and Shul Douglas, this and that. I mean, maybe the only thing it really points to, maybe hopefully, is Sidney Jones being healthy enough to come back, by September, October, kind of as projected. We haven't heard much about him or his rehab in a while, so maybe the Eagles are hopeful that Jones will come back sooner rather than later, because you got rid of, 2 of your corners in the past week or so. That's really the only thing that can kind of point. I mean, Alex, kind of has more sense of a football dynamic, I guess. But the only thing I can kind of point to is just they think that Jones will come back, or they really like these guys that are playing. I mean, I'm kind of perplexed too, just with this transaction and everything this week. I said with the Dornbos, with Phil Douglas, just odd, and the timing, and it has to be they must love the guys that are playing right now.
Well, I'll start with as far as Sidney Jones goes. I don't think I doubt, very much doubt, he's going to play this year. If he's going to play this year, he's not coming back till at least November or December, the last few games of the season, because you've seen how they've handled Carson Wentz this year. You see how they've handled Alshon Jeffrey. They're taking their time with these guys, and they're trying not to rush anybody back. So I highly doubt he plays this year. If anything, maybe November or December. But now, if he does come back, and the Eagles obviously are counting on him to be the guy that they thought he was on tape before he had the injury in the pro day, and he is that guy, then I could see him maybe making a move like this next season. But as you mentioned, Tyler, not right now. It's a weird timing for me, and I really don't know where the Eagles go at this point at cornerback. I mean, we know Patrick Robinson's obviously going to have to be the guy in the slot unless another move is made, but I just don't get it. Alex?
I was surprised too. I liked Ron Brooks. I thought he was a good fit. I liked what he did at Buffalo last year. I hadn't seen him too much in Philadelphia, so I couldn't speak to his level of play and how much he was struggling. But, if this helps open the door for some of these younger guys who are definitely going to be here to play and take their lumps, and, I guess I could understand that if they just think that Brooks is going to be either not an upgrade at all or a very marginal one. Let's get other guys a chance to get on the field, see what they can do. But that's the concern. Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are kind of similar, where they have some pieces. Eagles have good safety play. They bring in Ronald Darby, so you try to get your number one guy, but who are your complementary pieces?
Exactly.
And those are unanswered questions right now. So I was surprised. I mean, Matt, you tell me how well was Ron Brooks playing this year in the preseason?
When he was in there, I thought he was fine.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, he wasn't making any big flashy plays like Ronald Darby has, but he wasn't getting burned much, if at all.
Yeah.
So.
And you said Robinson's going to be the starter in the slot now?
That seems to be the consensus, because the Eagles, he can play inside and outside, which I think has helped him stay in this point, playing at the veteran minimum, and he's better. He seems to be playing better in the inside, so that's presumably where he's going to go. But I still see several scenarios this year where Malcolm Jenkins is probably going to move up in the slot for a decent amount of plays, and then you'll see Corey Graham come and fill in for him on the back end to play opposite side of Rodney McLeod.
Yeah, the weird thing is the Eagles in the secondary have a lot of guys that can play multiple positions, but they can't play any one position well.
Really, except for Malcolm Jenkins and for Rodney McLeod. Right. That's about it. You're absolutely right.
Right. I mean, in Jenkins and the slot's less than ideal, but the Patrick Robinsons, Ron Brooks, Corey Graham, those versatile guys that you just don't do anything super well. So, like I said, it's a tough spot, and now I have to think that you are super happy about the Ronald Darby trade. Could you imagine they didn't make the Darby trade?
Oh,
and Brooks flamed out. I mean, you have who are your guys? Robinson, Douglas. Who else?
Jalen Mills still is going to be probably your other starter on the outside.
Yeah,
but even that, he's taken some snaps on the inside too when Ron Brooks was still on this roster. So it's been a mess and moving people back and forth. But basically, what you're looking at is Darby's on the left, Robinson's in the slot, and Jalen Mills is going to be on the right hand side most likely. And then who knows what happens after that? Obviously, Rasul Douglas is going to make the team. He's actually shown some improvement, but I think he still has some ways to go, and we'll see what happens this week too. With the guy they just brought in, drawing a blank, from the Jets. McDougal, Dexter McDougal.
Yeah, Dexter.
He'll obviously get a lot of playing time tomorrow night against the Jets. So, I did put out, and you can check it out on ProFootballSpot.com, my 53-man roster projection for the Eagles, and I do have Dexter McDougal making the roster because I think the Eagles like the talent that he has, and let's face it, they don't have a whole lot at this point, and guys behind him really haven't made a whole lot of plays, so I think he will make the roster, and then we'll see what happens after that. So
Catrillo,
right now.
What was the most difficult decision that you had to make for your 53-man roster?
There were a couple at defensive line and running back. I think.
What were on the defensive line?
Defensive line, it came down to me between Elijah Qualls, who had a tough start to the preseason, was getting really egged on by the coaching staff, but then he really started coming on late. He had a really nice turnaround, and he ended up being one of the top-rated defensive linemen on Pro Football Focus, actually, along with Derek Barnett. So I think I ended up putting him over Justin Hamilton, who I thought was rather consistent this preseason overall too. And I originally put Hamilton in at first, but I just couldn't bring back the big turnaround that Elijah Qualls had, and he's also a 7th-round pick, and Justin Hamilton was an undrafted rookie free agent. So I ultimately went with him to be my 10th defensive lineman. But that was a tough one. And then obviously a running back between Corey Clement and Donnell Pumphrey, because the big thing is the Eagles put in a lot of stock in Donnell Pumphrey, trading up for him in the 4th round. We know how dynamic he can be out of the backfield, and the Eagles try to put him in a special teams role and specifically as a punt returner, and obviously he's really struggled there. So I think, and I don't think you can't really practice squad a 4th round pick. So I think what they're going to do is, if they don't put him on the 53-man roster, they're going to IR him with some sort of injury and try to develop him from there.
Well, we've seen 4th round picks get waived before. Steelers have done it a couple times.
I mean, but, I'm not totally ruling it out either. I mean, it would make the Eagles look bad, considering they traded up for him on top of it all, and being just a 4th round pick in general. But I'm still not totally ruling that out at all. I mean, but let's face it, Corey Clement has been simply better than Donnell Pumphrey. He's been a lot more consistent. He's actually had a majority of if not all of the Eagles' rushing touchdowns. I think all but one. So
I like
he's
it.
answered the bell.
That's my guy. That's music to my ears.
Yeah. So I would say those are probably the two tough ones right there. And then I guess for the cornerbacks, it was just tough. Like, okay, well, he struggled, but I guess I got to put him in there because he's really struggled. Like, that was just like pulling teeth. Seriously. I mean, just awful as far as cornerback goes. So that makes me worried. But we knew that was going to be the case coming into this season. So it's just something that we're going to have to live with, and you hope that Rasul Douglas really steps up. That's pretty much it there. So the other Eagles roster move that was made earlier in the week, long snapper John Dornbos, of course, is known for his magic and being on America's Got Talent. He was traded to the Saints for a 2019 7th-round pick, and I found that move a little curious, too. Now, you still, all this time, which was pretty much underlined because it's long snapper, I mean, nobody's really going to talk about it that much, is Ricky Lovato had been on the roster all this time, and if you remember, the Eagles brought him in for the last 3 games of the season last year when John Dornbos had that wrist injury. So it's not like Ricky Lovato doesn't have any experience playing. He got 3 games, and he did fairly well for the most part. And the Eagles kept him on the roster, I guess, to keep the competition going, and they decided to roll with him. He's definitely much younger. I believe it's a 13-year difference between him and John Dornbos, who's 37. And so I guess the Eagles wanted to get some more value out of him while they could and trade him, but I just found the move pretty curious because, John Dornbos obviously has been with the Eagles for 11 years. He's been very consistent. I would have just kept with him and not kind of, because, with field goals, I know they make it look easy, but as we all know, that timing for field goals, especially the longer they get, is really crucial, and that chemistry is so key. I know they've been kind of going back and forth, but that worries me a tad. I think ultimately they'll be fine, but that still worries me a little bit. Tyler, what was your reaction to that?
I mean, there's so many different levels on this. I mean, it's not really a big trade. I mean, if you think about it, Eagles standpoint, yes, he's a great guy in the locker room, all that stuff. He's there forever. He's, whatever. He's a good locker room guy. And he's formidable at his job. But he's also 37, and the Eagles got a 7th-round pick, not anything, but a 37-year-old long snapper. So that's good to look at. They got something for that. But also, is it worth giving up a guy who's that kind of team chemistry, locker room guy for a 7th-round pick? I mean, is it even worth it there? But then on the Saints side, I mean, you gave up a 7th-round pick for a 37-year-old long snapper. So it's kind of like, why would these teams? I mean, again, the kind of go back, but it's just puzzling and perplexing, I guess, is my word of the day. I mean, if you're the Eagles, there's no need to get rid of long snapper. I mean, maybe they thought, hey, let's get something for him. We've got a couple years left. I don't know what his contract situation offhand is. But maybe he's got a year or 2 left to get something. I mean,
I think the Eagles had just signed him to an extension not too long ago. Like, it might have been a year or 2 ago, if I remember correctly.
I guess. I mean, hopefully it doesn't come up to be a Trey Junkin here. Alex, get that reference, or Matthew Trey Junkin, whether it's the Giants long snapper or 49ers long snapper a couple years ago.
Is this the one that missed the snap on the extra point to have the game against them?
Never, yeah.
Never. Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that big of a trade. The long snapper, hopefully this guy, Otto's pretty good. But I think it is poor, a lot of team chemistry issues. I know the Eagles traded away Jordan Matthews, and Wentz was upset with that, so he was kind of butthurt. His chemistry went down. And then, Dornbach's a big chemistry locker room guy, so Harry Roseman kind of, taking away from the team chemistry aspect here, and all these trades in general happening. So it's very perplexing, for lack of a good vocabulary.
Well, I mean, as far as the locker room thing goes, yeah, it stinks to see some of your best friends and good character guys leave, but it's just the way the business is. They all recognize that, and hopefully that they don't let that affect their play, or else I think there's a bigger issue here. But, I mean, the reason why we're talking about this is because of the popularity of John Dornbach on and off the field, or else this really isn't that big a story because, again, when it comes down to it, we're talking about long snapper here. But, Alex, did you have any thoughts to this?
No, not really. I mean, I get it. Steelers are transitioning long snappers. They had their long-term guy in Greg Warren, didn't trade him away.
True.
It was a health thing, but no, I get it. To trade a long snapper for anything of value is good. The Saints had to need a long snapper. Their guy was struggling pretty heavily, I saw. So I don't know how these new guys, but I think you make a good point, Catrillo, that there is a chemistry there. That field goals and punts are such an operation thing that it's not just as easy as snapping a football. And Philadelphia, where the weather gets bad in December, that's going to be an issue. Who's your long snapper now?
It's Ricky Lovato. He's in his third year in the league, so he does have some experience, and he did play in the Eagles' final couple of regular season games last year when Dornbach had the wrist injury.
Okay. Has this guy snapped for other teams before in games or in preseason? I'm sure, but in regular season.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I do know he doesn't have a whole lot of experience from a whole, but at least in terms of the Eagles, he has a couple of games under his belt from last year.
Do you know where this guy went to college at? What's his name?
Ricky Lovato.
Okay, you don't know where he went to.
Yeah, I can't think of his college off the top of my head, but
he went to Old Dominion.
Oh, okay, yeah, so Old Dominion, but.
I was just going to ask because I was just curious about his experience snapping in poor weather conditions, and I'm not in Virginia, so I don't know what he did, but I think that's an important aspect. But I think you guys will be all right.
Right, and to add to that, with the 3 games that he snapped for the Eagles last year, I mean, he's still dealing with the same guys. Donnie Jones, the punter, is the holder, and then of course it's still Caleb Sturgis at kicker. But yeah, you still have to rebuild that a little bit. So we'll keep an eye on that as the season goes along. So we're gonna move on now to each team's got their 4th preseason games coming up here. Eagles have the Jets tomorrow. Steelers have the Carolina Panthers tomorrow. We'll make this real rapid fire. Alex, start with you. Give me a couple of battles you're looking at for both teams.
Well, for running back again, that last running back spot for the Eagles, Corey Clement, can Pumphrey show something? I mean, if he doesn't show anything in this game, doesn't show anything all preseason, that's going to be, you have to make a decision as a coach. Do you go with the draft stock? Do you go with how guys perform? And what message does that send to the locker room? Corner's still going to be interesting. It's clearly a mess right now. So that's probably the 2 areas I'm going to look at. Is Aguilar going to play in this one? A good bit? I don't know.
I don't believe he's going to.
Okay. I mean, so not a whole lot to go off of there. What about Shelton Gibson from West Virginia? He's been super quiet.
Yeah, he has been dropping a lot of balls in spring ball, and he's been better in training camp, but still not great. He hasn't done really a whole lot in games, so this is a pretty big game for him too. I didn't have him making my roster. I think if anything, he'll be a practice squad candidate.
Yeah, so that's a big time for him to step up. Matt Collins, who I've been impressed with. Is Matt Collins the next guy off the bench, no matter who gets hurt?
I think right now he's your number 4 receiver. At least in my book, he is.
He's played just on the outside, or has he played inside?
I think he's gotten a few snaps inside too. Yeah, actually, yes, he has with Nelson Aguilar. So he's a guy that is versatile. He can go outside and inside, and obviously he brings a special team. So he'll be a key part for the Eagles this year, definitely.
Yeah, definitely watching for Matt Collins tomorrow. And then Pittsburgh, where do I want to go with that? The back end of the cornerback roster of Brian Allen, I want to see progression from him. I don't think his odds of making the team are too strong right now, but I just want to see him get better and better. Back end of the inside linebacker spots, some stuff there, some of the defensive line. The last defensive line spot, I think, is back up for grabs right now. Johnny Max and Levon Hooks versus the world. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. It does not sound like Senquez Golson's going to play, which is just awful. That's going to be, he might have to go on IR.
Unbelievable.
His Steelers' chances, yep.
I feel like that's his middle name now is IR. All the times he's been hurt.
That's the truth. More games, more times on IR than games. He has not played a game at all, so
right.
It's bad.
Now, I don't. You might have answered this already. Is McDonald going to play tomorrow night?
Tomlin hasn't said, but I'd be very surprised if he did. That's just too short.
It is a quick turnaround.
I think him and Hayden will be good for week 1, but not tomorrow.
All right, there we go. D Jock, who's on your radar for both the Steelers and Eagles tomorrow in their preseason finales?
Honestly, I haven't looked at too much. Been busy at work. I know it's bad to say that on a football podcast here. But no, it's kind of a cop-out, but the same thing. I mean, not really looking too much as health-wise. I mean, I think both teams are kind of set in stone, and the Eagles are kind of in flux with all the trades. Because we're not going to trade much. I mean, the Steelers, I think, got a lot better this week. I think the Joe Hayden thing is a high risk. I'm not going to say low risk, high reward. I think the Vance McDonald thing is awesome. I kind of talked about that a little bit. He was a guy, San Francisco, highly drafted, really never had a great, quarterback out there, a second-round pick. Now he's coming to the Steelers with a guy who's a Hall of Fame quarterback. Kind of a insurance policy per se for Ladarius Green, but a guy who's better than Ladarius Green in general. So I think the Steelers got much, much better, and they got Le'Veon Bell back, who's going to be fresh as a whistle come start regular season, and he's going to come in pounding.
He better be.
And the Eagles are in flux a lot, and like I said, a lot of chemistry stuff. And Jordan Matthews gone, and Dornbos gone. New cornerbacks, new guys moving around. So I guess for the Eagles, it still kind of is, all hands on deck, get to know your team mode. But for the Steelers, you're kind of in coasting mode, and I said this team got a lot better here in the last week, and that's pretty scary and pretty awesome if you're a Steelers fan.
All right, so we'll keep an eye on that. The other thing I'm looking at for the Eagles, just in getting into the regular season, not necessarily for this game, is Nick Foles, who has sat out pretty much most of camp, has barely thrown. He's got that elbow injury that's been lingering all camp long, and that really, really concerns me going forward because obviously if Wentz goes down, you're going to go to Matt McGloin, who's been more than atrocious this preseason. I got to watch him all game tomorrow night because Nick Foles obviously isn't going to play. So I'm keeping an eye on that. We don't have a chance to really get into that much. Maybe we'll get into it next week. We still have a lot to get to, but I did want to throw that out there. I am definitely very concerned about that. So we go now to the Texans and Cowboys, the game that was moved on earlier in the week to AT&T Stadium where the Cowboys play due to Hurricane Harvey. The NFL officially canceled that, so all the Texans players can get back to Houston to, 1, help out, but 2, also get to their families as well. Pretty much here, guys, obviously the right move here. We start with D Jock.
My bad. Yeah, I mean, well, I guess it is the right move, but as Alex always said...
D Jock, what are you doing? You being that guy?
Let me finish.
You're going to be that guy.
Yes, it's definitely the right move, but because I was going to say the game means nothing. I was going to say, as Alex always says, the game's preseason does mean stuff for the guys trying to make the roster. So unfortunately for them, yes, guys that want to get more stuff on tape and try to fringe guys, blah, blah, blah. It sucks for them. But yes, overall, it is the correct move first.
You know what? It is a fair point, and from a logistical standpoint, they could have played this game, but considering the circumstances, obviously, football, regardless, even for the younger guys that I'm sure are very disappointed they can't play in this game and they want to put tape, etc., I'm obviously they're way more worried about their families and their current living situation in Houston, so they definitely want to get to that. And just the more and more you saw from guys like J.J. Watt, who's obviously been very vocal and raising, I think, up to $5 million now, or maybe even more than that now, and other guys about that, Bill O'Brien, etc., you can tell they were hurt and they were really distracted from getting ready for the game, so it was probably best to do that. But from an NFL standpoint now, you've already sold 40,000 tickets for $25, and their heart was in a good place to send those funds over to Harvey relief. But now that you've canceled the game, now you got to find a way to make sure you can still do that. So I guess hindsight 2020, they probably should just cancel the game in the first place, and either the NFL themselves sent a corporate donation, or each team should have sent something, especially since they're obviously both in Texas. So, but I mean that's the least of our concerns right now. Obviously, our full concern is not only with the Houston players and coaches and their families for their safety, but the safety of everybody in the Houston and Eastern Texas and Louisiana now area for all their safety, and hopefully everybody stays safe and stays indoors, follows the procedures that the emergency responders and police are following. We know we've had a few casualties, hopefully no more from this point on, and we just wish for the best for everyone down in Texas. Alex, any final thoughts with this?
No, well said. It was a no-brainer move to cancel the game. A lot bigger things happen in the football right now.
And the other point to this now, too, is with the storm moving towards Louisiana, with just re-hitting today, it's threatening New Orleans. And so the NFL is still talking about whether they're going to play the Ravens-Saints preseason game, whether they cancel that altogether or move it to Baltimore. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that as well to see what they do there. So now we'll go next to quarterback competitions. And before we even get to that, be remiss if we didn't talk about the big contract to the Lions, Matt Stafford. 5-year, $135 million deal, $92 million guaranteed, becoming now the highest paid player in the NFL. And, as we talked about with these contracts before, obviously a guy like Kirk Cousins could be next, and, the list goes on and on from there. Matt Stafford, yes, he's put up a lot of good numbers in his career, but let's face it, he's not worth that much money. So it continues to grow, but it's just the way it is, as far as the influx of where quarterbacks are now, especially. Alex, any thoughts to this?
No. He's not like, top 3 quarterback in the league, but, as you said, and as I always say, whether it's Derek Carr or it's going to be the same for Kirk Cousins next year, is that whenever you're deemed as a franchise quarterback, the face of the team, you get paid accordingly. And that basically means every time that you become the highest paid quarterback in the league. It's just that leapfrog effect. So, no, in a vacuum, is Stafford worth that kind of money? But when you look at the demands of the position and how much he gets paid, what the market is, of course you're going to pay him the money. And I think Matthew Stafford's a really good quarterback, so it's a kind of a no-brainer decision for the Lions.
D Jock?
I don't know. On the surface, I guess it looks bad, but I guess as the Lions here, kind of have to do it because, not for nothing, Stafford's probably the best thing to happen to the Lions. I guess you can say Kevin Johnson too, but Stafford's the best thing to happen to the Lions since, the Barry Sanders years or something. He's been there for a while. He's a franchise quarterback, and he's there. He's going to play his whole career there. But, that's just kind of like the whole nature of the beast. He deserved to be the highest paid quarterback in the league and play in the league? No. Should the beast, the next big-time quarterback gets up for a big contract, he'll leapfrog Stafford. The next guy down the road, he'll leapfrog Stafford. So it's just kind of how the NFL goes. That's the kind of nature of the beast. And Stafford's contract and the Lions are the first domino to fall. The next team, whether it's Russell Wilson or Matt Ryan or Tom Brady somehow gets another new contract. Him, Aaron Rodgers. Obviously there's so many quarterbacks are better than him. Do I fault the Lions? No. Was it a necessity? Probably not, but it's probably, he's 29, 30, I think he is. So still got maybe another 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. And he is his prime right now. I know, I'm hedging going back and forth, but is it a good deal? No. The Lions felt they had to do it, so.
Well, there is a lot of pressure on him this year to, live that contract and prove himself worthy of it, but 2, you don't have a whole lot around him right now, obviously, because there's no more Calvin Johnson. You have Theo Riddick, and that's pretty much it. And his offensive line isn't in the best of conditions either, so there's a lot of pressure on Matt Stafford this season, and with not a whole lot around him and not an offensive line that's not really in greatest shape, I think he could struggle this year, and I think he's going to be hearing a lot of the boo birds this year after getting this massive contract. Any thoughts there, guys?
Well, I shift things really quick. Just for an Eagles-related note, Stephen Mean signed a 1-year extension just announced a second ago. But Trello, have any thoughts or feelings there? Probably.
I like it. I love Stephen Means. He plays hard every single snap. I love watching him play. I had him on my 53-man, so that's a no-brainer for me. That's a good move there by the Eagles, finally.
Okay. What was your question again? I got sidetracked with some Means.
As far as, Matt Stafford
The Bluebirds.
Expectations for this season, with obviously not a ton around him. The offensive line's not in great shape, and now he gets this big deal. This is, to me, there's a lot of pressure on him, but I think he could struggle this year.
The line, I don't know if the line's better or worse. They lost Taylor Decker for half the year. I think Greg Robinson's the left tackle now, which is pretty scary. But the pressure's always going to be on them. The Lions have always underachieved. They haven't won big games. They haven't beaten good teams. What's Stafford's record versus 500 or above teams is like 5-46.
Right, and only 2 playoff appearances, and they were both one and done.
Yeah, right. Well, clearly.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's pressure. This team has to do well, and regardless of the talent or lack thereof around Stafford, I think there is talent on that team this year. You get Abdullah back, you get Eric Ebron back. They have some weapons. Stafford's the guy. He's getting paid like the guy. He's got to be able to carry this team on his back. So, they got to compete. They got to make the playoffs, and hopefully win a game. I think anything short of that's going to be a disappointment.
Definitely, he'll be interested to keep an eye on again this year as the quarterback continues with the contract situations there. So next we go to Vontaze Burfict, who Josina Anderson just reported a little while ago. His suspension was reduced from 5 games to 3 games by the NFL. He was reduced to 5 games after the big hit he had in the Kansas City preseason game a couple of weeks ago. And I saw the tape. I thought it was a clean hit. So I didn't really understand the move. I get the NFL's been after him for a while, and I'm not a big fan of him at all. I think he's a dirty player, and I think he either plays too hard where he gets dirty, or he doesn't give you effort at all. There's the extreme or from both ways here, and I think he's been a menace in this league for quite some time. But this suspension obviously was not justifiable here because that was a clean hit. D Jock, I'll start with you on the suspension. Obviously, do you agree or disagree with it?
Oh boy, there's a lot of layers to this, a lot of moving parts. Was it a dirty hit? No. Was it elevated because it was perfect? Yes.
Clearly, yes.
Obvious answer, yeah. It wasn't. If you count Entolas, I look at the play. The hit itself wasn't dirty. I think there was a lot of shoulder. There really wasn't much head or anything. The guy was 5 and 1 rat's length outside the 5-yard box. If you look at it, the quarterback, I forget who it was. It looked like the pass was going to come to the tight end, but he threw it to the guy behind him. I think it was definitely blind proportion because it was perfect. Again, you didn't see anything with the guy who hit, Odell Beckham Jr. There was some outrage, but that was a clean hit. That
was a clean hit too, and he was in a tough spot. That was the only play really for him to make.
That's a different situation.
Yeah, but
yes, absolutely.
Illegal quote unquote hits here. But there's nothing wrong with the hit. A little aggressive, but there's no head to head. There was no shoulder to chin strap, or it looked like a shoulder to chest. Nothing, but again, I think it's 90% good for it. 5 games was really excessive. Even 3's excessive. I might have done maybe 1 or 2, 3, maybe, but it's 100% good for effect in this role.
Really, if you think about it, it's a clean hit, so it should be none. But I guess the NFL still wants that message out there, so that's why they knocked out 2 and gave him 3. Alex, let me bring you in here.
Well, I'm not so sure about it. There not being any helmet contact. It's really close. It's not helmet to helmet, but I think you make an argument it's shoulder to helmet. It gets right under Sherman's chin strap, and we've seen those calls get called helmet to helmet before. You get right under.
But another thing was there was no flag. There was a flag in the play.
That's another good point. Exactly.
The NFL, but it was the refs on the field didn't call anything.
Well, it's easy to miss because that ball was heaved downfield, and Burfict did it at the very end. And I think the other context to it is that if you look at the play, you kind of see Burfict look at the quarterback. He knows the ball's going deep, and Burfict kind of takes a shot at Sherman on a ball. He knows it's not going there. Now, I'm all for big hits like that. They're a lot of fun to watch. Vince Williams had a similar hit last year, though. The ball was intended for the receiver. It was thrown to the guy behind, so there's some more context to that. And it is legal to do that kind of stuff. You see that stuff happen all the time. Guys get picked off. But I think you can make a case that there was some sort of helmet contact, shoulder-to-helmet contact. You can see the context of how late the hit was and how Burfict really timed some Sherman up like that on a ball that's thrown deep. And then, yes, of course, the Burfict's history plays a big factor in that. He loses the benefit of the doubt while that might be unfair to him in this situation, sorry, don't get fined and suspended 9 times over your career. And the reason why it was 5 games was because the 3-game suspension that he had for the AB hit for the start of last year.
Right. That's true. That's a good point.
Heightened. If this was a different player, then yeah, you might start with 1 or 2, but you can't just go from 3 now back down to 1. You has to escalate. So, I understood where the league was coming from, and I don't have a lot of sympathy. Actually, I have no sympathy for Vontaze Burfict.
No one should.
And I think the hit was more questionable than what some people think.
Bias was going to be because of Steve. No, yeah. I mean, Alex, like, if you're the NFL, like, of course, like, you're going to suspend them for 5 games, all concussion stuff, and Vontaze Burfict.
But maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe NFL is being a little too mean to him, and I don't know. I mean, I guess for both of you, should he be suspended at all, we think? Or what's your kind of deal on this, him be suspended at all?
Well, the question is, if you're fine with the suspension, you have to assume it was going to be more than 3 games, because that's what he got last time, and it's going to escalate each time. I think you could argue it's a suspendable offense. Again, given Burfict's super long history, and I think the play is closer to being illegal than what you guys have said.
No, but I mean, like, aside from NFL suspending him in general for 5, but if there's no suspension at all, would you have been okay with there's no suspension at all? Like, or do you think it wanted some sort of repercussion?
Well, I mean, like I said, I didn't even know that it happened until he got suspended for it. I wasn't watching the Bengals Chiefs preseason.
Right, I was the same thing too. I didn't know it. I didn't even see the hit until after he got the suspension.
It just comes down: is it a legal hit or not? If the NFL defined it as an illegal hit, if they believe that there was helmet-to-helmet contact, if they have another angle that we don't see, then yeah, it's suspendable. If there was no helmet contact, then maybe not. Again, I still think there's some other context in there about how late it was, how you kind of see Burfict look at the quarterback, see he's ready to throw deep, and then he goes after Sherman. You're right that there's some layers there. And again, as we've all said, Burfict's history certainly played a role.
For me, just from a general standpoint with Burfict, I'm just surprised he's even still in this league. Because I think it just comes a point in time where you do continuous stupid stuff like he's done in games and everything else that this comes to a point where how are you still in this league at this point? Like, to me, he doesn't deserve to be in this league anymore.
I don't know if I go that far. I'm obviously not a fan of Vontaze Burfict, but banning a player creates a whole set of logistical headaches that would be a mess.
Right, I know it's not going to happen, but I'm just saying, like, I just think he's a guy. We all forget sometimes. It's a privilege to play in this league. And it's preached to the rookies every time they come in for those rookie symposiums and everything like that. And here's a classic example of a guy that just abuses that privilege. And I know it's never going to happen, but when you look at all these things that he's done in the past, it really is a miracle that he's still in this league. That's the final one we'll have there. So we suspended for the first 3 games now instead of 5. We're going to stay in the AFC North for a second, guys, as we go to some quarterback competitions that have been happening around the league as the preseason begins to wrap up. First, the big one, DeShone Kizer. I know we touched on him a little bit last week. He has now been officially named the starter for the Browns for Week 1. And as I mentioned last week when we last had this conversation, I was not a fan of bringing him in first. I think the Browns are, first of all, I think they're rushing him a little bit, and I think he needs to sit because there's no question that he can throw the football. He's got a very strong arm on tape. We've known that, and I've even said that. But his decision-making is really, really poor, and I saw that on his tape. I was surprised that he even got drafted that high in the late 2nd round. I thought he was a 3rd-round pick at best. And, yes, he's looked good this preseason, but Mitchell Trubisky has too. And, D Jock, as you and I have talked about how deceiving the preseason can be, the regular season's a whole different animal, and I think the Browns are going to regret that decision because of the way you've seen DeShone Kizer's decision-making. And you go back to the Giants game last week of the couple decisions he made. The one throw he made off the back foot, runs for the first down, doesn't slide, takes a big hit. I mean, those are the things that you really got to learn and protect yourself if you're going to be the franchise quarterback. And I get it. It's obviously the quarterback situation's not ideal right now, but to me, there has to be some patience here because, let's face it, the Browns are still far away from being a playoff contender. So your thoughts there, D Jock?
No, I was muted. I mean, I kind of said last week. I mean, the Browns think they got somebody good here for the long term. I guess maybe it's a little bit too early, but I don't think it's. I mean, I think us as the media, whatever we are, people in general, these are not the Browns of old. They've really been terrible the last couple of years, but they're really building. I mean, this year, and we talked about last week, they could win 6 games, 5 games.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that's their ceiling. When we talk about they've improved.
But if you think, even on the offensive side of the ball, Hodges got a really good running game. Isaiah Crowell's looked good the first couple of years in the league. You have Corey Coleman entering his 3rd year in the league. He looks like a very full wide receiver. And even on the defensive end, they drafted Myles Garrett, 1st overall pick. He's looking good. And they also got Jabril Peppers. He's good on the back end there. So overall, this team isn't terrible. I mean, but I don't know. Maybe it's just kind of, I guess kind of, not to compare him to Carson Wentz, but last year they kind of thought, okay, the Eagles are going to put Wentz in there bubble out for the year, sit him out, have him learn. Maybe this year they thought, okay, Kaiser's going to sit out for the year and he's not ready and we'll play next year. But you saw how well it worked out for the Eagles, and the Browns are, I guess, kind of desperate to find a franchise quarterback. But I guess Kaiser looked well enough in the preseason, well enough in the OTAs to deserve the spot. He has looked pretty good. So, and again, for a team that's been starved for a quarterback and starved for a star forever, you got a quarterback who looks pretty good, a defense led by Garrett and Peppers, who are supposed to be both of them first-round picks, first-round talent. I mean, I don't hate it, as I said. If the Browns win 6 games this year, that'd be 6. If they win 7, it's amazing. But they should win 5, 6 games and be back on a good track here.
Right, and if you're a Browns fan, that's what I think you're looking for in Kaiser. Especially considering maybe what could happen in logistics of those games. Alex, let me bring you in now. I know you were a Cody Kessler fan and wanted him to play and think he should have played, but your official thoughts to this?
Well, Kessler's now 4th, so again, yeah. Alex, the only one on the Cody Kessler bandwagon. No, I think Kaiser's looked good. His ability to extend the play, he's got a good arm. He's being able to drive the football down the field. I think his decision making has been better than what I thought. I think his overall game and development's been better than what I thought it was after a horrid season. The controller, you can attest to this last year at Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's a chance to find out what you have in a guy. I love Hugh Jackson. I think he's the best play caller and schemer in the NFL, and I think he's going to be able to put, Kaiser in some good positions. They're going to run a lot of option plays. They're going to run a lot of boots. They can do some different stuff. So, I think if there's a situation for Kaiser, as funny as it sounds, because it's Cleveland, and we joke about Cleveland, but I think there's a situation for him to succeed, it's going to be with the Browns, because their offensive line is really good. They totally reinvested in that. They have a good back in Isaiah Crowell, who can run the ball between tackles. They have a good pass catcher in Duke Johnson Jr. The receivers, of course, are lacking, and losing Pryor is a big loss, but you do add Kenny Britt. And I think the way that Jackson's going to be able to scheme things is going to really help Kaiser out. So,
really,
what's that?
You think Kenny Britt's actually going to help him out?
No, I said the way that I think Pryor's better than Britt, but at least you have a weapon there, a big, tall target.
Okay, yeah, he is a veteran.
Hugh Jackson's going to be able to scheme it and help Kaiser out quite a bit. I'm sorry, I might have cut out there sitting on my cord. So, no, I get the decision, and Pittsburgh will obviously get the first crack at him here first week of September.
Right, and we'll obviously be getting into that very soon. And, I think, D Jock, you made a good point about Carson Wentz and how I obviously didn't think, and a lot of people didn't think, he was ready to start and probably should have sat a year, but it obviously worked out fairly well for the Eagles, especially when they got off to that 3-0 start. And I'm not saying the Browns are going to be doing that, but I think they saw that last year, and they can deny it all they want, how they wouldn't have picked Wentz even if they had the chance to do it again. But I think internally they would have, and they want to prove themselves otherwise by now they drafted a guy. Now we're going to show that actual interest and confidence in him and start him week 1 and go from there. And I think that's why they put him in there. I think he's still going to be rushed, but we'll see if it works out for him. But I think they were desperate to make that move, and they wanted to get him in there because of what happened with Carson Wentz. I think that definitely went into somewhat of the decision-making there. And obviously they really didn't have anybody else. So next, similar question in Chicago. Mike Lennon, you signed to that big $48 million deal, or Mitchell Trubisky, who has lit it up pretty good and has looked actually really good in the preseason so far. We start with Alex.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Glennon. Just I think Trubisky's got too far to go right now. I think Glennon had a good outing in the preseason game this past week, which was big for him.
He needed that, definitely.
Confidence. Yeah, definitely needed that. I feel bad for them, though. They lose Cameron Meredith, blows out his knee.
Oh, that was a big injury, yeah.
Had issues. Kevin White's had issues with health. Just I don't know who they're going to throw the ball to this year.
Right. I mean, they'll have somewhat of a running game with Jordan Howard, but if they don't have anybody to throw the ball to, he's going to get taken out rather easily. So, D Jock, let me go to you. I would guess here you would start Trubisky as well if you like Kaiser in Cleveland.
I think Trubisky has outplayed Glennon here in the preseason. I think it's a little different story. I think you probably go with the veteran, have Glennon start, and then go from there. I mean, I think Trubisky. It's weird. I think he's ready, but I don't think he's ready. I mean, he's looked good, but I still want a little bit more from him. But I'd probably say go with Glennon. Glennon's a good, solid quarterback. He's not going to lose any games. See what happens from that. I'd probably go that route with the Bears. Have Glennon start, a good little system quarterback for him there. Have Trubisky kind of learn, and then maybe slowly integrate him from there. So
now, I would even argue Trubisky's had a better preseason than Kaiser, but I still don't start in week 1. I still go with Mike Glennon, especially I paid all that money for him too. And I do think now I think Trubisky was the second best quarterback out of this draft class, but I still think he needs to sit a little bit, and I would have sit him the whole year, but I don't anticipate that happening. I think, because let's face it, the Bears are probably looking at the number 1 pick this year. If not, they're going to be competing with the Jets for that. So
I think the Jets have that.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Yeah, all right, so they're competing for number 2. Regardless, they're going to win 2-3 games, maybe 4 at most. Wait a little bit, let Glennon start, and then at the right time, throw the kid in there and see what happens. But I'm not ready. If I'm the Bears, I'm not ready to put him in there just yet. And then finally, the Jacksonville Jaguars are in a little bit of a quarterback issues right now, as Chad Henne got the start in the 3rd preseason game. Obviously didn't play well, or the 2nd preseason game rather. Obviously didn't play well enough because last week Blake Bortles got the start again and was named the starter for week 1 for Jacksonville. So maybe it was just a message that was sent by the coaching staff and Doug Marrone, and they actually do want to keep him in there because obviously Chad Henne's not the answer. So I think once you yank a guy like that, obviously Chad Henne's not the answer, but I mean if you go back to him, that kills the confidence for 2 quarterbacks. And so now when you start this back and forthness, which I think is actually going to be the case this year, I don't think there's going to be one start. I think you're going to see Bortles start some games, and if he struggles, it's basically going to be like a hot hand situation, which is definitely not the situation you want to be in if you're Jacksonville. But I think they set themselves up that way because of how they had that quick trigger there for Blake Bortles. Alex, let me start with you on this.
Oh, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
I mean, right, but what I'm saying is you're sending mixed messages, and that's never good, no matter how good or bad your quarterbacks are.
Well, I think the sincere thought was that Henne was going to be the guy, but then Henne did so poorly that he went into the 4th game, and I think it's just a mess because she just, like I said, they're both equally terrible. It's going to be a tough year in Jacksonville. I feel so bad definitely for Allen Robinson. I mean, I don't have much of an analysis because I don't know what to say. They're both terrible. I can't tell you which one I'd rather have. You'd rather have neither. You go with Brandon. I bet you Brandon Allen makes at least a start this year, the 3rd-string quarterback for them right now, just to try someone different. I mean,
won't be surprising.
It's bad.
But that's a great point you bring up. I mean, him, Alan Hearns, all these guys that just have so much talent, and it's been wasted because you have a guy that you can't throw to him. They have some decent running backs. Offensive line is iffy. Defense they've had pieces, but nothing really has come together yet. It's really it's got to be a really just demoralizing situation for some of those Jacksonville fans, knowing that you have some really good pieces on both sides of the ball. You've been building the defense specifically, and it's been a mess so far. D Jock, your thoughts on this? I know Blake Bortles is your man, so obviously I'm sure you're disappointed by this.
Tails.
Tails.
Yeah, the corner just flipped, landed on tails.
Ah.
I guess that means Blake Bortles this week. No, I mean, as you said, Blake Bortles coming out of college, I know we had a draft show, and it's cataloged on YouTube on the old CUTV, the Nest. I said to make
good times.
And I said to make the Blake Bortles bust and get the Hall of Fame ready. And,
yeah, that's not happening. I'm sorry. I hate to burst your bubble.
No, I mean, you honestly can't go wrong with either of them. I mean, I'd switch them every series. Can we do that?
What is this, college ball? No, you can't do that.
We switch them every play. Can we have a,
2-quarterback system, the old A11?
Yeah. Just
that's what I think is going to happen this year, honestly. And maybe 3-quarterback system if you mentioned they bring in their third string, Alex. But D Jock, I'll go back to you.
Yeah. But then, just how they have third down running backs. Let's have a third down quarterback that's going to come in and throw the ball when it's 3rd and 30 because the offensive line's terrible also. So they're going to come in 3rd and 30 and throw up a Hail Mary. No, but honestly, I mean.
Why don't I go Wildcat with TJ Yeldon this year? Try that. Because why not?
I guess Bortles has the not even the highest upside. I guess just he's the youngest of the three. He's going to be around the longest. So I guess in some sense he's quote unquote your not a franchise quarterback, but your build around quarterback. I mean, Henny's formidable. He's been around for a while. He's the solid backup. He's the 8th veteran.
Yeah, he stinks.
I mean, but Bortles, the Jaguars, I guess, still have hope or still want to give themselves hope, justifying drafting Bortles so high. I mean, I'd probably still go with Bortles, I guess, as your quarterback. And as you said, if you're going to yank him out for Handy, but it's a preseason now. So in the next thing, you can either start Bortles and then have Henny, and then have Henny come in. But at that point, I think that's kind of saying you're giving up on Bortles. Or have Henny start, have Bortles kind of be the backup. I mean, I guess that's an option too, because Bortles from day one has been the starter and looked upon. So maybe he does need some time to sit on the bench, and carry the clipboard and kind of see how it's done. But either way, I mean, not that it matters and I don't really care, but I don't think there's really a wrong pick for the Jaguars at this point, at this juncture.
I think we're spending too much time on Jacksonville's futility.
No, exactly. I'm just trying to think of something to say here, but
you're right. There's something to say. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe we'll try. Maybe I'll look for the Wildcat in them this year with TJ Yeldon. I think that'd be fun. I think that actually might be better, but we'll see. Well, on that note, that is going to do it for this week's edition of the show. Alex, D Jock, always a pleasure. Next week when we're back, we're talking regular season football. That greatly excites me. I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, the football's ready to go. Get caught the pause. But no, yeah, the college football starting up. They started last week. That was pretty good. Got all the big marquee games this weekend.
Yep. Indiana, Ohio State tomorrow.
Yeah, the NFL's right behind them. So, go football, go sports.
Yes, absolutely. Go football. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition. Make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter at FF Podcast 1. We're on YouTube at Football Friday. I'm at Twitter at MCatrillo. Alex is on Twitter at Alex_Pizora. And D Jock is on Twitter at Tyler_DeGiacomo. Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Football Friday podcast.